afternoon, everybody. I want to... Yeah, no, we'll work on it. Good afternoon, everybody. We want to bring to order the regular meeting of the City of Los Angeles, the City Council. Homelessness and Poverty Committee. My name is Marquise Harris-Dawson. I'm the chair of said committee. I'm joined by committee members. Our vice chair, representing the great San Fernando Valley, Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez, and representing the pristine coast of Los Angeles, centered in the gentleman from Venice, California, Mr. Mike Bonin, who lives in Mar Vista. Apparently the council members are being gentrified out of their districts. We'll begin our meeting with public comment. We have a few folks who have signed up for multiple items. Just so you know, folks, we have a number of items that we'll take on consent today. So we may take all of your public comment at once because we are in danger or likely to lose quorum at 4 sharp or just a little bit before. So we're going to try to move this expeditiously. So don't get out of sorts if you get called what appears to be out of order. So I'm looking for multiple comment cards to appear on this screen. I know there's somebody with the name 666 who has multiple comment cards, so they can come forward. And I'm guessing that our good friend Ms. Ramirez is in the same category, so if you could come forward as well.
So, as you all will know and have known regarding our mayor's State of the City address, he still continues to provide us with shelters, but not housing. And based on item 1 regarding housing loan program, is the city willing to provide us with at least $250,000 loan to purchase a home so we can get off the street? Necessarily, I don't think that's accurate or true. What do you think, Mr. Ben Carson? What do you think? It's not a sleeping or funny laughter of a matter. After all, it's our mayor who's sleeping around with Glenn Dake from DWP, as John Walsh, Hollywood Highland points out, and that's the reason why the funds are not there for the homeless population, because some people are given favoritism to jobs versus those who are homeless who need favoritism to a home. All these years have gone by, and still we have an epidemic, a crisis of homelessness. And more so in regards to that, you know, I've been down to the port and I see homeless people. And I compare the ports to 2 individuals who stand out the most at City Hall. Because they're not tyrannical. They're just as belovedly as me and we. But, you know, I can't compare one port from another because some of us are larger than most ports. But if we were to do our job and get things straight, then you wouldn't have the criticism of the homeless population coming in here to trigger you to attempt to threaten us like Mitch Englander did in Van Nuys to Wayne Spindler and that critic Armando Herman. Stop threatening.
That's your time.
People.
Thank you so much. Ms. Ramirez, you're on.
Thank you. Homelessness is not cheap. Middle-class America is homeless and in poverty because the globalists and political city pussies and puppets are too busy subsidizing these goddamn wetbacks and gangbangers who are filthy, nasty, come caca, venomously jealous, nosy, wicked, violent, uncivilized savages, and racist, hate-mongering, chango, Latino wetbacks and gangbanging.
Ms. Ramirez, the character of these people is not in the jurisdiction of this
committee. If you've ever lived in East LA or Pico Union where they throw their furniture out in the streets, then maybe you'd think the same way too. But I'm not the butt kisser. You are. So having said that, you should start doing your job by helping your African Americans help deal with the crisis that they're dealing in South Central LA with all these goddamn wetbacks and gangbangers. And you'd be better like too. Having said that, yeah, homelessness is not cheap. I live on the streets. Why? Because I'm not going to kiss their ass. Why? Because they're rude and they're nasty and they live rent-free from all of us. I refuse to go to my grave living rent-free on a wetback Because again, America stands on the rule of law. That's what I want to enforce, is the rule of law. I love this country, and I will fight for it, right and wrong, I believe, as I was taught as a child. That my mom and daddy taught me. But I will not bend down for these fucking filthy. Mexico wants them out. Why? Because they don't want them either. Look at them. Look at their communities. They destroy America. They're pigs, pigs, pigs. They don't do anything good to serve others. They don't believe in helping or becoming an asset to this country. What they do is they destroy every city, every community, and that's what they're great at. Destroying people's lives. And they destroy people's future. They destroy the dreams of people. That's why misery loves company. They are gangbangers. Misery loves company. I refuse to follow the herd mentality. At least I stand on my own, and no one's pulling my strings. God bless America and Donald Trump. I can live with that. Amen.
Someone named Encino, going once, twice, and 3 times. Please don't disrupt the meeting, Mr. Herman. That's your last warning. Ms. Kuntze, Shirley Ways, Steve Ducey.
I'm the only one. Cool. Just 2 minutes of general, that's all?
Yeah, so you're on multiple comments, so
Cool.
One for general and one for your item.
So kind of more specifically to the comprehensive homelessness strategy, I know that you guys are getting a report from the CAO on that. By the way, sorry, I'm Steve Ducey. I'm with the Democratic Socialists of America, Los Angeles. I'm also a board member of the Central Hollywood Neighborhood Council, but I'm not here on behalf of them today. So the guiding principles on the website from the mayor's office are decriminalization, housing first, place-based strategies, and balancing between the health and safety concerns with the rights and needs of people who are living in unacceptable conditions, right? That's the strategy. What we're seeing on the streets, when we do street watch, when we look at encampment sweeps and we see what's going on with Operation Clean Streets, what we see is dehumanization. We see harassment first. We see police-based strategies that put the safety and concerns of businesses and property owners over the people who are living in these unacceptable living conditions on the streets. Okay? Now, in March, our outgoing police chief, Charlie Beck, defended the increases in arrests of people who are experiencing homelessness, saying that by the very nature of addiction, specifically, some folks need an incentive to change behavior. Sometimes a citation or an arrest can be that intervention. This is the flawed logic of a decades-old failed war on drugs mentality that has proven time and again to be counterproductive and simply fill up our jail system with more and more people. A jail system which, I might add, is the largest one in the world here in LA County, which we're about to spend $3.5 billion to make bigger. Specifically with attachment 1 of your CAO report on 3A and 3B, the standardized first responder training and develop encampment engagement protocol. If the encampment engagement protocol that y'all have is being in place right now and what we're seeing on the streets is what's going on, we really need to radically change how we're thinking about how the police are interacting with people on the streets, and I'm going to suggest that they shouldn't do it at all. Hope teams are supposed to pair police and outreach workers. There's no outreach workers out there, folks. Somebody from LASA will walk by and say, "You want housing today?" And that's it, and they walk away. We have a better rapport with those people out in the streets than LASA does, okay? So I think we know how to solve this problem. The police is not the way.
All right. Mr. Jed Perriott, John Motter, Mr. Ryan Kelly.
Good afternoon, Jed Perriott with the DSALA. Yeah, it's really disturbing to hear the mayor talk about this now suddenly being a shelter crisis. So now he's kicking the can down the road here with permanent housing, it sounds like. It sounds like the strategy is now we're going to build these shelters, and if people don't take them, we're going to be increasing sweeps along with these shelters. And so, we're going to send hope teams, and they're going to give citations and arrests, and, if you don't take shelter, maybe you're going to go to jail, sorry. That's what it sounds like is this short-term strategy to sort of get unhoused people out of sight, out of mind. As the previous speaker mentioned, we're seeing that this strategy is a disaster. The hope teams that you all are so excited about, and Garcetti says he's giving more money to, consists primarily of police. And I asked a sergeant from Hope, I interviewed him about what Hope is and what's the difference between a Hope officer and a regular police officer, and he didn't really have an answer. He said, we all get mental health training, so yeah, I guess the only difference is that we're assigned to go to encampments. And, but we're supposed to do it with LASA, but we don't have to do it with LASA. We don't have to do it with sanitation, so we're still a HOPE team. And so what's the point? It feels like it's all just window dressing. It feels like this PR stunt to make it look like you're doing something different, but really it's more the same. Just like LAPD Reset and Skid Row is basically the Safer Cities Initiative with a different name, and it's doing the same things. And just 2 weeks ago at Poinsettia Park in Koretz's district, we have an encampment where a HOPE team showed up to get folks out of the way for a cleanup, harassing them. We have on camera them handcuffing a man for violating 5611, for trying to move his stuff out of the way of the cleanup zone. You had your time, sir. No, we gave you time. We're not going to let you move that 10 more feet. We're going to handcuff you. That's insane. That is a violation not only of the Fourth Amendment to me, but the Eighth Amendment. That's cruel and unusual punishment. We cannot be doing this to people living on the street. We have to be accommodating them. Not everyone wants to go to a shelter either right away. We have to accommodate some of these encampments. We have to.
Thank you. I'm John Mutter. I'm with the DSA and with Ground Game LA. I'm here to talk about criminalization as well. So I think last time we were here, when we were talking about 5611 enforcement, the feedback we got was that those citations aren't being enforced, or they're not being issued. I mean, I got on my phone, I got dozens of citations from my unhoused neighbors, 5611, 4118, whatever. Just about every way you can think of to criminalize homelessness, people are getting citations. My buddy's Zykes this morning picked up a lit cigarette that someone flicked out of the window of a car, took a drag off it, then put it down and put it out with his foot, and an officer cited him for littering. That just blows my mind. So yeah, he's going to have a court date over that, and if he misses it, he'll be in jail. I don't know how much it costs per day to jail someone. I think it's like $75,000 a year, so do the math. I'm sure a motel voucher would be cheaper than that. My friend Sunshine, I told you all about, she's a 72-year-old disabled woman. Y'all cleared her stuff out with the homeless sweep. Almost right after I testified about that last time, I was down here at the VA getting my back looked at because I could barely walk. She calls me in tears that another sweep's coming through, clearing her out. There were no postings about it. So I jet over there. I managed to get there in time to help her move some of her belongings. Most of it got thrown out, her tent, everything else. So she was without a tent or anything for a few weeks. She managed to get enough money to get a new tent. She's back now, but that was a really traumatizing experience for her in the really tough few weeks. And then you went through and swept again on Monday, cleared everyone's stuff out. Some people were at work, their tents and all their belongings got destroyed because they had to leave early. Yeah, so I don't know if we're trying to find our way out of this, or maybe we want to do something different than we've been doing for the last half century.
Thank you for helping your neighbors. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Ryan Kelly. I'm also with Democratic Socialists of America in Los Angeles. I was dismayed to learn that the city administrative officer intends to persuade this committee that the city has made significant accomplishments in expanding access to toilets for homeless people. Any recent progress is, if you'll excuse the term, a drop in the pond. If you have witnessed the brutal encampment sweeps being carried out against the homeless people of Los Angeles, you will have noticed that the sanitation teams bring their own porta potties for the crews. It's hard not to see it as a symbol of the city's disregard for the unhoused. Like you to imagine yourself in dire straits with nowhere to go and, more importantly, nowhere to defecate. Eventually, everybody has to. So you take yourself to a dark alley or behind a dumpster or maybe behind one of the rare trees, and you risk arrest or an indecent exposure charge and everything that entails. And when you're done, you come back to find the police and sanitation throwing away your every bit of belongings, everything that you have value in, that you require to get work or to continue work. Most unhoused people have jobs. And then when they're all done, you see the sanitation worker get into the porta potty they towed there and shut the door behind them. It's frustrating. It's dizzying to consider. So I urge you to interrogate the CAO's report today from the perspective of those living the reality of homelessness, who understand that incremental increases on partial solutions aren't scratching the surface of the problem. Reports like this have a suspicious rosy glow to them, and I hope you will look beyond that to the reality of what's happening to people.
Thank you so much. Still look forward to a South Los Angeles DSA chapter. If we could read a few items into the record that I believe we'll take on consent. For the record, we're joined by the esteemed councilman from the 9th District, Mr. Curran Price. Congratulations on the football stadium today, and welcome to committee. So items 3, 4, 5, and 6, if you could read those into the record.
Yes, sir. Item number 3 is a motion by Council Members Harris, Dawson, and Cedillo relative to a sole source sale of the city-owned parcels located at 8707, 8727 South Menlo Avenue, and 8742 to 8752 South Vermont Avenue to 88 and Vermont MGP LLC for a price determined by reuse studies of the value of the city-owned properties. Housing Committee waived consideration of this matter. Item number 4 is a motion by Council Members Harris, Dawson, Wesson, Huizar, and Martinez relative to a request to the LA Homeless Services Authority to report on how it feels the permanent supportive housing units, the demographics of the current PSH placements, and steps taken to ensure the units are marketed to the community they are located in. Item number 5 are CEO reports relative to the first quarter and second quarter of the Comprehensive Homeless Strategy Quarterly Performance Report for fiscal year 2017-18. And item number 6 is a motion by Council Members Harris, Dawson, Englander, and Bonin relative to a request to the Proposition HHH Citizens Oversight Committee with the assistance of the CLA, CAO, and HCLA to make recommendations regarding changes to the PSH process and funding structure to enable a more expedited delivery of homeless housing.
Thank you. Stay with me here. So we will adopt items number 3 and 4 if there's no objection. Hearing none, that'll be the order. Item number 5, we will note and file. Hearing no objection. And item number 6, we will adopt. Hearing no objection. That'll be the order. So we'll start we'll go to item number 1.
Item number 1 is an LA Housing and Community Investment Department to report relative to the proposed updates to the Prop HHH Permanent Supportive Housing Loan Program guidelines. This item was scheduled pursuant to the Council action of December 12, 2017.
Excellent. So we'll hear from a team from our Housing Community Investment.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Tim Elliott, manager of multifamily at HCID. Back in December, when the HHH guidelines were approved by this committee and council, we were instructed to report back on ways to ensure that more qualified developers were eligible to participate in HHH and on including innovative projects that don't necessarily meet the guidelines of the program. And this included shared housing, campus-style projects, projects with less than 25 units, and incentives for private financing. So, and also we were asked to come back with a timeline for soliciting developer feedback and implementing this kind of program. So the current guidelines that were adopted require that the lead developer be the general partner the managing general partner in at least two homeless serving projects that have been open for at least a year. And they define the lead developer as the one that's putting up the guarantee for the tax credits. So we think that this could be a barrier to, say, market rate developers coming into the supportive housing arena, because the guarantor has to stay with the project. They put up guarantees that to ensure compliance with the investors for the whole length of the period of the compliance period, which is like 15 years. So it's unlikely that they would do a turnkey arrangement with the developer, with a nonprofit, and then turn it over to them, because they can't just walk away. But if they stay in a joint venture partnership, it may not be necessary that that builder have experience with homeless housing, because as long as the nonprofit and the service provider and the manager can assure that there's going to be good house rules and proper management, that should be enough. So that's one of the changes that we're looking to make. Now, with respect to shared housing, we've talked to the Housing Authority, and they tell us that they can do shared housing with tenant-based vouchers, but they can't project-based vouchers in a shared housing or co-housing type arrangement. However, we think that shared housing that does not rely on rental assistance could be eligible for the HHH facilities program, which they fund shelters and other living accommodations. So that's duplexes and things like that are probably eligible, but just not through the HHH housing program. We've had conversations with the Housing Authority and with the school district and other large landowners about bringing some of their resources to bear, the VA, and what we've seen is that there may need to be special treatment for very large projects that weren't contemplated when we got these rules approved. So the State Tax Credit Committee says that a project of over 150 units could be split in two. And we've started to see that happening in the second round of funding, that people are submitting 2 applications for 1 project and calling it 2, and it's probably to get around our $12 million cap.
I'm sorry, they're doing what now? They're applying for, you have 2 who's applying for 1 site?
Right. I mean, either horizontally or vertically. We've seen this happen, and the state says as long as it's 150 units or more, that's perfectly legal. But we want to align our guidelines with theirs to make sure that there's no ambiguity about what the maximum amount of money a project can qualify for. And we also need to codify that in no case will we pay for more than 50% of the cost of the total development cost of the project. That's not in the guidelines, and people are pushing it under the current status. So we also talked with Hackla and others about the minimum number of units. There's a floor of 25 or 20 supportive housing units in a project, and it's been suggested that they be that over multiple phases in a large project, that this could be expressed as maybe a percentage rather than a number, so that maybe 10% of a 200-unit project would still produce a number of supportive housing units that could be efficiently managed by, say, 1 case manager. So that's something that we're going to look at as well. So finally, the schedule that we've outlined here is that we're going to kick off our stakeholders process. We're going to try to have a meeting on May 1st or May 2nd, draft regulation changes based on the input we get, and then we'll take them to the Citizens Oversight Committee, the Administrative Oversight Committee, and then be back in front of you on June 6th, so that that we can have another call for projects in July and get it approved prior to the recess. So that's kind of briefly where we're at. We'll have a lot more information. We're coming back with the second round of funding recommendations. They're going to the Oversight Committee on Friday, and we'll be back in front of you after that process is complete.
Excellent. Thank you. Questions, comments? Mr. Price?
Do the innovations include, or thank you for the report, do the innovations include, or could they possibly include small lot development, single-family homes?
Well, there's really nothing to preclude that right now. And with the new supportive housing ordinance, an RD 1.5 lot, you can have 1 unit per 500 square feet. So it's probably very possible now to have an efficient project on a small lot.
Is it too costly to build the small cottages or the post war small cottages or the bungalow style?
That could certainly happen. I mean, if it's one for every 500 square feet, these are typically, these tiny houses are usually smaller than that. So it's possible to have that kind of typology.
Nothing prevented at this point.
There's nothing to prevent it, no.
I know we've been trying to identify potential city-owned properties that are available. Are we at a point now where we're going to start looking at privately owned properties?
Well, we've been, as I said, we've been talking to the school district and with HACLA about bringing some of their land into the system.
Special's going.
Well, we're at the very beginning stages, but it's a shocking number of students are homeless, and that's something that they feel the need to do something about. I mean, we've done 3 workforce housing projects with them, and
Where the project?
one is on the campus of Gardena High, which is actually in the city. One is in Hollywood, and another one is down right by USC. And
What kind of projects were they?
well, they were designed in their mind for teachers, but it turns out that the teachers make too much money to qualify. But one of the outcomes of tax reform is that we can increase the income limits for tax credit housing to people at 80% of median. And when we look back at our first-time home buyer programs, which go up to be, so that the subset that's between 60 and 80%, a lot of nurses, a lot of teachers. So we think that might help us because now they're saying you can go up to 80% of AMI and they can pay more rent, and as long as the average is 50, so it would actually maybe drag up the number of extremely low-income renters that we can serve in the same project. So so that's something that we're looking at, and they just want to make sure that everybody's on board before we get into this. And so the thought was with Jordan Downs or other large, projects like this that that they could have a subset of supportive housing, across their campus, and not stigmatize or and so and they're willing to do that, and they don't want to take any money for the affordable units. So this is an opportunity that we see to. And the other thing too is that we're seeing more developers bringing their own land into the system. Yeah. That's property that they already own. They can build they have a surface parking lot. They can build a parking structure and land on the top of that. So there's it's about $12 million worth of land that we've seen in the last round that's been donated.
Thank you. Excellent. Mr. Rodriguez, Mr. Bonin? Nothing? Mr. Bonin?
Breaking my promise. Just a couple, I hope, quick questions. Buy-in covenants on existing units?
That's something that, I don't know about existing units. I mean, HHA just to increase the housing supply, but that's certainly something that we've been talking about. We could have a sort of forward commitment program or something like that.
Well, if I have units in my district, as many others do, where an affordable covenant is about to expire, can't we purchase an extension of that covenant and therefore provide a unit without having to do all the construction costs?
We would have to, I mean, preservation is a big part of what we do anyway, and there may be, different sources that we could bring to bear. I mean, we refinance a lot of projects that have covenants that are expiring. But we could look at it like that covenant purchase program.
I'd like to see us do that. I mean, the per unit cost for PSH is ridiculously high, and we need to find ways to bring it down. And some of the costs when we start from scratch or we rehab a building at the VA aren't going to come down. But I'm looking for ways that we can sort of bring down the average per unit cost. Hello.
Hello. Sean Spear from the Housing Department. Just to add to Tim's comments, HHH is primarily geared towards new housing production and new units. That being said, what we're looking at under linkage fee is the opportunity to increase the level of dollars that we would have available for preservation, which would include being able to extend covenants on existing deals.
When you extend a covenant, you're extending the existing covenant. It isn't necessarily a covenant that's similar to HHH, right?
That's correct. Well, no, and it may not be.
Because there are tenants there, presumably, right?
Exactly. So it's assuming that it's going to serve the same households that may already live there and that type going forward. What we are also really focused on in looking at linkage is the fact that we have a number of SRO buildings that serve folks that would otherwise be at risk of homelessness, as well as other properties that have extremely low income restrictions on them. And so as part of that program, we would want to reinvest in those too.
And could you just elaborate a little bit on shared housing and co-housing?
Well, as I said, the Housing Authority tells us they can't project-based vouchers in a shared housing situation. And you know, the supportive housing projects rely on these housing assistance payment contracts, these HAP contracts.
Can you say the basic rationale for them not being able to do that?
I talked to the Housing Authority this morning, and they basically said the HUD rules don't allow it.
Got it.
They can give vouchers to individuals, you know, tenant-based, but you can't finance a project based off a tenant-based voucher that could disappear when the people move. So that's kind of what we found out. I mean,
how does that tie our hands with Triple H?
Well, we can't finance, you know, provide long-term financing for, you know, without rental subsidies. You know, you can't borrow a 15-year mortgage without a 15-year HAP contract. No, which is not to say that you know, a smaller scale project with duplexes and things like that doesn't rely on a mortgage, that the rent pays, you know, that might be eligible under the facilities program.
And not that we have the best relationship with the federal government at the moment, but when is the last time someone has actually had a conversation with HUD about changing that or loosening that?
I don't recall that the housing authorities, you know, tried to put that in their operating plan, and that's what it would take. Is somebody to ask.
Yeah.
So we haven't asked.
Not to my knowledge.
To our knowledge, no. We'd have to ask the Housing Authority if they've had those conversations or not.
All right, that's something I'll be pursuing then. All right, thanks.
Thank you. So we'll receive and file this report, which takes us to item number 2.
Item number 2 is a CEO reports relative to the Prop HHH fiscal year 2017-18 bond status report and the fiscal year 2018-19 Prop HHH bond issuance schedule.
Good afternoon, Meg Barclay, City Homeless Coordinator in the CAO's office. The two reports attached to this file, there are two reports attached to this file. The first is the first status update on the fiscal year 2017-18 Prop HHH bond issuance, and the second is the schedule for the 2018-19 issuance. So the status report provides information on the status of all of the HHH projects in the first issuance, including the name of the project, descriptive information, the award amount, and other information about the status, so the contract execution date, when we expect construction to start, et cetera. It also provides definitions and a key of target populations for each of the projects. And I provided a larger version of the attachment. As you can see, we had to put it on a pretty large piece of paper to get all that information to fit. And when it gets shrunk down, it's not very easy to read. So the first status report was considered by the Citizens Oversight Committee and the Administrative Oversight Committee in January and has been forwarded to you for your consideration. Of note, there are some schedule updates for a number of PSH projects and also a description of two projects in the facilities program that have withdrawn, one for as a result of increased costs associated with Proposition HHH funding, and the other as a result of being subject to the CRA's Wiggins settlement, or the city's Wiggins settlement, excuse me, and that basically doesn't allow the project to convert to transitional housing as was proposed. And so those two projects have withdrawn, and when we have some recommendations for reprogramming those funds that are pending Administrative Oversight Committee approval. The second report on the file is the schedule and key agenda items for the Proposition HH8 2018-19 bond issuance. Where we are now, the project expenditure plan for the facilities program was transmitted and considered by the Citizens Oversight Committee in March. It is pending Administrative Oversight Committee approval at this time. And the Housing and Community Investment Department's project expenditure plan for the PSH loan program will be considered by the Citizens Oversight Committee this Friday, and the Administrative Oversight Committee next week, along with a report describing the full amount of the bond issuance itself. So we are on schedule at this point in time as anticipated by this schedule, and we anticipate having those two reports to you in May.
Excellent. I'll begin because I have a very basic question, and it's a general question, not specific to this, but it applies to this. So it seems to me that now we're at the point where we know the prices are going to continue to go up for things. What, if any, specific measures are taken at the outset, given that at this point it's widely known that the prices are going to keep going up?
I mean,
we buy a bunch of steel and put it in a DWP building somewhere, or what? Like, what do we do? Because at a certain point, we're going to have to say no.
Yeah, I think we're actually already seeing that happening, where there are some steel vendors apparently that are stockpiling steel at this point, and it's already getting more expensive even though the tariffs aren't in place. There's very little we can do about that, not knowing what projects are going to be coming online and when. But I think that we have been watching the per unit cost. There's other sources of funds that should come online in this year, we're hopeful, that will also just allow for Proposition HHH to not have to take as much of the project cost as is taking right now. There's the state SB2. Well, it depends on the project. The maximum subsidy is $220,000 a unit, and without other and so, sorry, and I can actually defer to HSID on the housing costs as well, if there's someone here who wants to speak to that.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Come on up, HSID.
Yes, as you observed, the costs are going up. Labor, materials, and this is we haven't had a project labor agreement yet on one of our projects, but we've seen the 500,000.
Wait. Let me just stop you on the labor thing. So are you suggesting that the cost of these projects does not include people making prevailing wage?
No, they're all making prevailing wage. We just haven't had one with the PLA yet.
Okay. But that's what the PLA provides for, basically, right?
Well, there's a lot. There's job training. There's apprentices and somebody to keep track of all that. So that's also a component. They'd have to hire a jobs coordinator and so forth. But right now we've sort of seen $500,000 a unit is not an extraordinary cost anymore. But what we've said in the Triple H program is we don't want to fund more than half of that cost. So at $220 a door, we're kind of right there. But as Megan said, that there should be, the county's getting $600-700 million in No Place Like Home money, which is right now subject to a court challenge, but it could be taken to the voters through a bill that was introduced recently, and that should eventually become available probably by the end of the year. And that should help us probably cut our subsidies in half and stretch the dollars further.
Okay.
Additionally, the state SB2, half of the revenue from that measure is supposed to go to homeless programs in the first year. And so once the regs are out, we'll know how much of that could also be made available for permanent housing construction as well.
Okay. Questions or comments, colleagues? I see you furiously studying the list. Ms. Rodriguez? If there's nothing else, we will adopt the report.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, for item number 1, just for clarification, since there are no pending reports for that item, I guess is it the intent of the committee to continue item 1 in committee because there are no pending reports?
We will continue the matter as you suggest.
Yes.
Thank you. What other business do we have?
That clears the desk, sir.
Excellent. And we have no general public comment?
None.
Excellent. We're adjourned. Thank you so much.
He's got 100 units here. McDavid is 386. Sour is 386.